So today I have a story, right? As usual, I have a story. Today the story is about, you see, me, right? Or let's say, right? This young influencer by the name of Bruce Wang, right? Some of you may know him as this Asian fella who, believe he's Vietnamese, but anyway, he is a power lifter. He was an awesome power lifter. He still is. And there was an event, well, there was a time, wouldn't call it really an event, where he threw his back, right? And then he was injured for a while. And I mean, overall, he couldn't train, right? So the main point I'm trying to make with this is, you see, I'm not saying he's ego lifting, it's just something that happened. Although the main point of this video, since today's title is your ego is destroying your physical potential, right? What I'm trying to say with this is essentially that, your ego doesn't really care about results. It just cares about proving something to whoever that is. Might be you, might be someone else that, you put in your head and decided, yeah, I want to prove a point. I'm doing this to prove a point. Whether it's a friend that challenged you and said, oh no, I bet you can't lift that much weight. And then you do. But in doing so, you also completely tear your pec, right? Does that seem like the, smart and, just normal thing to do? I don't think so. Why do I say that? Because, well, you're injured now. You can't train. So where's your progress? Your ego wants you to leave the gym feeling like a warrior. There's nothing bad about that, don't get me wrong. It wants the heaviest weight, the hardest session, the most exhaustion, right? And I mean, that's not something bad to aim for, right? The exhaustion. But feeling destroyed, you see, actually, what does that do? It improves. See, okay. Actually, feeling destroyed and improving are two very separate things. I say this why? Because, well, obviously, you don't get rewarded for how much suffering you go through or you can tolerate, right? Your body only cares whether it can, what it can take and what it can recover from and adapt, right? So you confuse your issue, right? And my issue, what it used to be as well, was I used to confuse fatigue with productivity, right? And wait, I'm centered. Now I'm centered. Yes, I am. Now I'm centered. Okay. Also, I look to the side because I have notes. You see, you're not confused. You're just misguided, right? You confuse specifically fatigue with productivity, right? I'm not exhausted. Did I even train hard enough, right? That's what goes through your mind usually. And, that's a very just negative thing. Because, well, a lot of people deliberately chase soreness, which is not the correct thing to do. Exhaustion and failure, because, those are immediate signals. And yeah, fine. You can gauge your workout through that. But, progress is delayed. Why? Because, and you might not see the muscle growth for weeks or for months, right? So the ego chooses instant reward, which is basically, I destroyed myself today. But again, I want to make this very clear. That is not inherently bad. The gym becomes a place where, right, you constantly need to prove yourself again and again and again. And every session becomes a performance, right? And you see someone else lifting more. So suddenly, your ego says, no, fuck, we can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. Absolutely not, right? Because your little insecure brain cannot tolerate that anyone else could be better, right? That there is always a bigger fish out there. No. See, suddenly you need to lift heavier. You had a bad night's sleep. You still need to hit your numbers, right? You're sore, but taking a rest day feels weak. Aw. You're no longer training based on what your body needs. You're training based on what your ego can tolerate. Essentially admitting to itself, right? So your body doesn't really understand your pride in a way, right? Your muscles don't know that you refuse to quit. They don't know that you're David Goggins, right? Your nervous system doesn't care either if that you wanted to prove that you're disciplined or whatever. Your tendons either. Like, all you're doing is just harassing yourself by not taking a rest day or being too, ego driven. You can mentally be a fucking animal, right? While your physiology is just telling you to slow down. Because you have all the signals. You're tired, your tendons hurt, your knees hurt, your elbows hurt. But no matter what, you still go to the gym. And I can't lie to you, that used to be me for a long time. That really did used to be me. And I suffered because of it. I used to have tennis elbow for like the longest time. Or my shoulder used to creak and crack every time I did this movement, right? Now I have a healthy shoulder. Why? Because I focused on mobility work. I went and got a nice sports massage. The masseuse really loosened up my shoulder because it turns out I had a fucking huge knot. And you see, training is the stimulus, yes, it is. But recovery is where the adaptation actually happens, right? So the core distinction between these two is that you don't build muscle during the set, right? You build it and you create a stimulus, right? And then your body needs the resources for it to actually put into place, needs them to recover, to adapt. More training isn't automatically more growth, it's not linear. And that's what, you find that, especially as a beginner, you find it like, whoa, what do you mean? I should be training less? Really? And you see, at a certain point, you're just adding more fatigue and you're not adding more stimulus, really. Like, all you're doing is just getting more tired and getting less optimal in a way, right? So the never skip mentality can become very stupid very quickly. Consistency is good. It's great. Do not get me wrong. But also, people take it, to mean never adjust, never back off, never listen to your body. Just listen to your brain. Your body's weak. Sometimes discipline is basically forcing you to train. And that's not bad, obviously. But sometimes discipline is also to go home and fucking sleep, to put it very plainly. The ability to rest and, recover appropriately within the means of actually resting and recovering can require more maturity than, people actually want to give it credit for, instead of just mindlessly pushing through, right? I'll give you a very, very simple example that came to me just now. This is my day today, right? You may think, oh, why do you say that? Because today I was meant to actually go to jiu-jitsu, but I didn't. Why? First of all, I had to do groceries. Second of all, I had horrible sleep last night. And I felt tired. I knew I wouldn't perform because I've done that before. I have. And the overall experience was not the best that time. All I was left with was more tired than before. Kind of felt like throwing up. I didn't feel strong at all. I felt weak. So why go? Sure, fine, you learn and you learn a new thing. But realistically, if you're tired, if you're fatigued, if your brain is on a mental strain, how much of that knowledge are you really going to absorb? Not much, really. And it just feels useless for me to go and not actually prioritize my recovery. So, you see, the point I'm trying to make with this, the main goal here to get through to you is that your ego is basically addicted to metrics, right? It's addicted to results or feelings. So, weight on a bar, numbers of sets, right? Hours trained, steps, calories burned, blah, 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 PRs per week. The problem with that is when you worship the number that's on the scale or that's on the bar or number of sets or whatever it may be, you have to think for a second, is this actually moving me towards, my common goal or the physique that I want to achieve, the performance I want? No, to put it very plainly, no. Because you see, sometimes doing less allows you to actually perform better in the long run, right? Recover better and ultimately progress faster, right? The strongest guy, right, is not necessarily the guy doing the most, right? Now you can sit here and tell me, oh no, but look at David Goggins, he gained weight and then he lost it all and blah, 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 and he's got screw in his knees. Do you want to have screws in your knees? Do you want to have permanent, joint damage? I've seen multiple interviews of him talking about it. He lives a horrible life. Not necessarily in the way that you may think, but you see, a horrible existence because every time he walks, he's in pain. He just pushes through it. That's fine. That's awesome resilience. But is this longevity maxing? Is this really what you want to do? No, it isn't. No. Because, it doesn't feel good to stay home, right? It doesn't feel nice. You may think like, oh, I'm such a bitch, blah, blah, blah. Your ego hates deloads, right? Because they make you feel weak. They make you feel useless. They make you feel like you're going backwards. And you may continue telling yourself like, oh, I haven't trained in a week. I'm losing all my gains. I need to make up for my missed sessions. I have to not eat, or I have to start running everywhere. All these things, right? And trust me, I used to be that kind of person. To an extent. Because then I understood, okay, no. Holy voice crack. No. You see, me actually sitting and recovering is a lot more valuable than going and performing shit. Because at the end of the day, right? The real flex isn't actually being the hardest or going the hardest. The real flex really is, being in control, right? Anyone can walk into the gym and destroy themselves completely. That's easy. That's like the easiest part if you really think about it. But the harder thing to do is understand exactly how much you need, right? And how to do it properly. And then having the self-control to say, enough for today. Enough for today because I'm finished. I'm done. There is no point in me going forward or doing more. Because again, less is more, right? Quality over quantity. You hear this all the time. Your ego is probably making you feel weaker every single day even, and you call it discipline, right? And then you see, you train when you're exhausted. You ignore the pain because, oh, I'm a tough guy, Resting feels weak. Oh, I'm a tough guy. You chase heavier weights because, well, someone else is watching, or you have to post it somewhere because, you're starting to do this thing. And then you leave every workout feeling completely destroyed, but it's not the sense where you're like, no, I had a good workout. It's like, fuck, I had a destructive workout. But you convince yourself that that was a good session, right? But this is the uncomfortable truth that you have to kind of sit with. Your body doesn't give a fuck about your ego. It's all about how much you recover and how well you recover. Thank you. Good night.